Hello friends and welcome back. Over the course of next few videos, we will discuss data types in depth. In our day-to-day lives, we deal with a lot of data. All this data can be categorized into different types. Take the example of a list containing the result of all the students in your class. Let's see what all different types of data are present in this list. The name of the student is a set of alphabets. Our school has a policy to award marks in subjects only in whole numbers. In case the total marks in the subject are a fraction like 84.5, it will be rounded off to 85. So, the marks in each subject and the total marks obtained are whole numbers or integers. Percentage is a fraction as it can be 94.5 or 84.0 or 75.25, etc. Data in the promoted column tells us if the student is promoted to the next class or not. It can contain Y to indicate yes, the student is promoted, or N to indicate no, the student is not promoted. Another way to look at it is that promoted column represents one of the two states the student can be in. Either he is promoted or he is not promoted. Putting on my programmer's hat, I will refactor the promoted column a little bit. Instead of writing Y or yes if the student is promoted, I will write true. I will write false if the student is not promoted. Now it will look something like this. A true here indicates that the student was promoted. A false in this row indicates that the student was not promoted. So far you are with me, right? Good. Our sample student result sheet contains 4 types of data. The first type is the set of characters, which is the name of the student. Second type is whole numbers, which is the marks in each subject and total marks. Third type is fractional numbers in the percentage column. Fourth type is true-false in the promoted column. The Java language formally defines a category for each such type of data, and these data categories are called data types. Java provides two types of data types: primitive data types and reference or composite data types. The reference types are class type, interface type, and array type. We will first look at primitive data types. I will talk about reference types in detail when we will start discussing arrays. In Java, the primitive data types are broadly grouped into 4 groups: integers, floating point types, characters, and boolean. The integers group represents the whole numbers like the marks in each subject and total marks columns of our student result sheet example. The data types in this group are byte, short, int, and long. The floating point group represents the fractional numbers like the percentage column of our student result sheet example. The data types in this group are float and double. The characters group represents the characters like the name of students in our student result sheet example. There is only one data type present in this group, char. The boolean group represents the true-false kind of data like the promoted column in our student result sheet example. This group too has only one data type, boolean, which can either have the value true or false. This gives us 8 primitive data types, namely byte, short, int, long, float, double, char, and boolean. Out of these 8 primitive data types, the first 7 data types are collectively termed as numeric types, as they deal with numerical values. Next, we will look into each of these data types in detail. Continuing our discussions on data types, we will first dive into integers. Integers contain 4 primitive data types: byte, short, int, and long. All the data types in this group are used to store whole number values. They cannot store fractional numbers. Those of you who have some experience with other programming languages, especially C++, might recall that other programming languages provide this concept of signed and unsigned variants of numeric data types. Java has no such concept of signed and unsigned variants. All numeric data types in Java, except for char, can store positive and negative numbers. These data types in integer group differ widely in their size and range. Let's now look at each one of them in detail. The smallest integer type is byte. It has a size of 8 bits and can store whole numbers in this range. Next is short. It has a size of 16 bits and can store whole numbers in this range. Int is the most commonly used integer type in Java. It has a size of 32 bits and can store whole numbers in this range. Long, as the name suggests, is used to store really long numbers. It has a size of 64 bits and can store whole numbers in this huge range. Let's go to BlueJ and write a program using integer group data types. I have coded this class integer data types demo to demonstrate integer data types. This class has this function demo integer data types. Here in this function, we first declare a couple of variables of byte data type using the byte keyword followed by the name of the variables. We have named our variables first and second. We then assign a value of 10 to first and a value of 20 to second. Alternately, I can combine the declaration and initialization of these variables in a single line like this. I will remove these lines. Let's compile the class now. As you can see, the class compiles fine. So both ways are the same. This one saves a little bit of typing though. Next, we print the value of these variables. Let's execute the program at this point and see the output. We have already compiled the class. Now let's go to the main window and create an object of integer data types demo class. Next, we will use this object to execute demo integer data types method. We have the complete output and we can see our byte types printed on the screen. Let's go back to the class code again. Here we declare two short variables, short a and short b, like this. We assign the values of -100 to short a and 30,000 to short b. Let's see what happens if we assign out of range values to them. To short a, I'll assign a value of -40,000, and to short b, I'll assign a value of 40,000. Notice the compiler has started giving errors. The error message says possibly lossy conversion from int to short. The range of short is -32,768 to 32,767. -40,000 and 40,000 both are outside of this range of short. Hence, the compiler is giving this error. I will revert them back to their original values. We are printing short a and short b and we can see them in the console window. Let's move on. Here we declare an int variable int_example and print its value. Then we declare two long variables world population and GDP of India and assign them appropriate values. Notice the suffix L here and here. If we don't specify this L, the compiler will give an error. It says integer number too large. So what's wrong? Why are we getting this error? Whenever you specify a number in your program, Java assigns a data type to that number too. By default, all integer literals are of type int in Java. We will look at integer literals in detail a little bit later. For now, understand that whenever you write a whole number in your program, it is an integer literal. So all these 10, 20, minus 100, 30,000, 1 lakh, and these huge whole numbers here all are integer literals. Their default type is int. These huge values here are outside the range of int, and that's why we are getting these errors. The error says integer number too large. Compiler is treating this number as an int value and complaining that it is outside the range of int. To fix this, we need to explicitly tell the compiler to treat these numbers as long values, and we do so by specifying an L as a suffix of the number. The case of L doesn't matter. We can write capital L or small l, both are equivalent for this. In this video, we will discuss floating point types. This group of primitive data types are used to store fractional numbers or real numbers. Before we look into the data types present in this group, we need to first understand a few challenges associated with storing fractional numbers in computer's memory. Take the example of square root of 2. The result is 1.41421356237309. The digits after the decimal just go on, they never stop. Similarly, take 8 divided by 3. The result is 2.66666 and an infinite number of 6 after the decimal point. We can't store infinite number of digits. After all, the computer memory is limited. So what do we do? You must have encountered this in your maths class, and the general solution here is to round off. Maybe keep 2 or 3 or 4 digits and discard the rest. In doing so, we lose accuracy. Maybe just keeping 3 or 4 digits is fine for the maths assignment, but in real-world applications, accuracy is quite important. Take space or chip designing fields. Here we need a very high degree of accuracy. Maybe a tenth of a millimeter is also super important. To address this issue of accuracy, all hardware and programming languages use IEEE 754 standard for storing floating point numbers. IEEE 754 proposes a way to store floating point numbers at varying precision levels. The complete details of the standard are beyond the scope of this course. We will just look at an overview of IEEE 754, which should be good enough for understanding float and double data types. In IEEE 754 standard, the idea is to compose the fractional number of two main parts: a significand that contains the number's digits, an exponent that says where the decimal point is placed relative to the significand. The two things of the standard that we are interested in is the single and double precision formats. Single precision format uses a total of 32 bits to represent the fractional number. Out of that 32 bits, 24 are used to represent the significand and 8 bits are used to represent the exponent. Double precision format uses a total of 64 bits to represent the fractional number. Out of the 64 bits, 53 bits are used to represent the significand and 11 bits are used to represent the exponent. The key takeaway about single and double precision format is this. Double precision format stores fractional numbers at higher accuracy than single precision format, as more bits are used for the exponent compared to single precision. With this much context set around precision of floating point numbers, let's look into float and double. The float data type stores a number in single precision format. It has a size of 32 bits given it stores the number in single precision. Float is useful when you need to store a fractional number with around 6 to 7 total digits of precision. Let's go to BlueJ and try out float in code. I will start a new project. I'll name it float demo. Now create a new class. I will name the class as float data type demo. Let's open the class and start adding code to it. First, let me remove this auto-generated code. I will start a function demo float. Inside this function, I will declare a float variable f1 and I'll assign it a value of 148.7623. Wait, there is an error. Let's see what the problem is. Okay, so the compiler is yelling about conversion from double to float. Remember what I told you while discussing the integer data type demo program? Whenever you specify a number in your program, Java assigns a data type to that number too. By default, all fractional numbers that you specify in your Java program are of type double. So the compiler is treating the value 148.7623 as a double. When we are assigning it to our float variable f1, we are essentially converting a double value to float value. Since range of double is more than the range of float, such conversion may lead to some data loss. So the compiler does not allow such conversions implicitly and flags them as error. In this case, our value 148.7623 is well within the range of float. So we just need to tell the compiler to treat it as a float value. We do so by writing the letter F at the end of the number like this. The error is gone now. Case of letter F doesn't matter. I can write a capital F here and get the same result. Okay, moving on, let me print this value and execute the code. I will compile the class. The class compiled successfully. Next, let's execute demo float method. For this, first create an object of float data type demo. Now use this object to execute demo float method. Let me bring back the class code here. I was able to store 148.7623 in a float variable without losing any precision. As 148.7623 has 7 digits in total, float can represent it accurately. Let me declare another float variable f2. I will assign it a value of 148.7623549. Okay, I forgot the F. Let me print this value. Let's execute the program again and let's see what we get now. Java was not able to store 148.7623549 in a float without losing precision, as 148.7623549 has a total of 10 digits, which exceeds the number of digits that a float can represent accurately. So Java rounded off 148.7623549 to the nearest value that can be accurately represented by float and stored that instead. I hope this gives you a better idea about float data type and how to use it. Coming back, let's look at double data type. Double stores a number in double precision format, hence it has a size of 64 bits. Double stores the number with 15 to 16 total digits of precision. Let's head back to BlueJ to try out the double data type. This is the same float data type demo class which we were working on for float data type. Let me comment out this F1 part here. Now we will store this value of 148.7623549 in a double. Let me change the data type of F2 to double. As we are storing a double, we no longer need this f. Let's compile the class and execute the demo float function. We can store this value in a variable of type double without losing any precision, as double has a higher precision of 15 to 16 digits. That wraps up our discussion of floating point types. Next, we will look at the characters group. Can you figure out what is all this on the screen? I will help you out. This is welcome written in different languages. Try to see how many languages you can identify. You might be wondering what welcome in all these different languages has to do with characters in Java. Java uses Unicode to represent characters. Unicode can represent nearly all languages of the world like English, Hindi, Bengali, Kannada, Arabic, Hebrew, Chinese, Japanese, Greek, Hangul, and the list goes on. Serving content to the user in their native language is very crucial for the success of next generation of internet applications. You would have experienced it for yourself too that it is becoming more and more easier to create and consume vernacular content in your native language on the internet. WhatsApp, Facebook, Google, TikTok, all these platforms are heavily focused on supporting local languages of the user. All this is made possible by Unicode. It provides a unique number for every character irrespective of the platform, device, application or language. It has solved the problem of uniformly representing characters across platforms and supporting almost all languages within a singular character set. Now that we have some background about Unicode, let's take a look at the character group. Character group has only one primitive data type char, which is used to store a single character. The size of char is 16 bits and it has a range of 0 to 65,536. There are no negative chars. One thing to note about char is that char is just like one of the data types of the integer group. In fact, in the formal Java language specification, char is referred to as an integral type. What this means is that you can assign a number to a variable which is of char data type. You can also perform arithmetic operations on it. Sounds a bit confusing? Let's look at a BlueJ program which should make things clear. Here is our integral char class containing the method demochar, which will help us to understand how char data type is similar to integer type. Let's run the program to get the output, then we will go through the program and understand the reasoning behind the output. I'll first compile the class. Go to the main window, create an object of the class. Using this object, run the demochar method, and here we have the output of the program. This program prints the string the value of ch1 is A, followed by English alphabets A to Z. Let's look at the program now. This line declares ch1 to be a variable of type char. In the next two lines, we assign a value of 65 to ch1, and when we print the value of ch1, we see that its value is capital A. We assigned 65 to ch1, but it has a value of capital A. What's happening here? Remember, ch1 is a char data type. When we assign an integer value to a variable of type char, Java treats that integer value as a Unicode. It will assign the character corresponding to that Unicode as the value of the variable. 65 is the Unicode for capital A. So when 65 is assigned to ch1, Java knows that the value of ch1 is the character whose Unicode is 65, which is capital A. Hence, when you print the value of ch1, capital A gets printed. Next, we are utilizing the fact that Unicode values of capital A to Z are in sequence, and we can perform arithmetic operations on char types to print A to Z using a for loop. We have given ch1 an initial value of Unicode of A. In each iteration of the for loop, we are incrementing the value of ch1 by 1 and printing it. The result is that A to Z gets printed on the screen. For now, just ignore this char mentioned here in parentheses. This is a cast operation which we will look at soon in this section. Next, we will look at the Boolean group. This group too has only one primitive data type Boolean, which is used to store the Boolean values true or false. The size of Boolean is 8 bits, but only 1 bit is used to actually store the value. Since Boolean values can only be one of the two types true or false, 1 bit is enough to store them. As we have seen previously, Boolean is the type required by conditional expressions that govern the if and for statements. It's time to look at a BlueJ program to see Boolean types in action. Here is the Boolean type class. Its demo Boolean function demonstrates how to use Boolean data type. Let's quickly execute demo Boolean method and then go over the program. This is how we declare a variable of Boolean type. Next, we assign the Boolean literal false to btest and print its value. Notice in the output, the value of btest is printed as the word false. Next, we change the value of btest to true and again print its value. As expected, its value gets printed as the word true. Next, btest is used as the condition of if statement. As btest is a Boolean variable, it is itself sufficient as the condition of if statement. No need to write it as if btest equal to true. That will work too, but it is kind of redundant. Next, we set btest to false and use it in if statement. As btest is false, this println does not execute. Hence, we are not seeing this output on the console window. This wraps up our discussion of primitive data types in Java. Next, we will go through literals in detail. Stay tuned to discuss literals in the next lecture. Bye for now. I briefly touched upon literals in the code blocks and tokens lecture. Now is the time to dive deep into it. To quickly recap, any constant value which can be assigned to the variable is called a literal. Let's start by looking at integer literals. Any whole number value is an integer literal. Integer literals are most commonly used literals in a typical program. 2, 16, 18, 4, 26, 2 crore 40 lakh 41,973. These are some examples of integer literals. In our programs, almost all of the times we use decimal numbers, meaning base 10 numbers. The examples shown here are all examples of base 10 numbers. In addition to decimal numbers, Java also supports octal, hexadecimal and binary numbers. To write a number as an octal number, prefix it with a 0. Java considers numbers with leading zeros as octal numbers. So don't prefix your number with a 0 if you don't want it to be interpreted as an octal number. Octal number system uses the digits 0 to 7. So if you write 08 or 09 in your program, it will lead to an error as 8 and 9 are invalid octal numbers. To write a number as a hexadecimal number, prefix it with a 0x. The case of x doesn't matter. You can use either capital X or small x. Hexadecimal number system uses digits 0 to 9 to represent values from 0 to 9 and letters A to F to represent values from 10 to 15. Again, the case of letters A to F doesn't matter. You can use either lowercase or uppercase. To write a number as a binary number, prefix it with a 0b. Here again, b can be in any case. Let's look at a program to understand all this with examples. We have the class NumberSystemDemo, and its demo number systems methods will create and print numbers in different number systems. As always, let's quickly execute the program and then go over it. So we got our output. Let's go back to the code. Here we are declaring an integer variable decimal number and assigning it the value 2020 in base 10 and then printing it. Nothing new here, we have been doing this since the beginning of this course. Next, we declare an int variable octal number. Octal equivalent of decimal number 2020 is 3744. We assign this octal value to the variable octal number. Notice the leading 0 before 3744. This tells Java that this integer literal is in base 8 or octal form. We print the value of octal number variable in decimal form, which comes out to 2020. Here we declare an int variable hexadecimal number. Hexadecimal equivalent of decimal number 2020 is 7e4. We assign this hexadecimal value to the variable hexadecimal number. Notice the leading 0x before 7e4. This tells Java that this integer literal is in base 16 or hexadecimal form. The println statement prints hexadecimal number variable in decimal form, which comes out to 2020. After that, we declare a int variable binary number, and to it we assign the binary equivalent of decimal number 2020. We prefix the integer literal with 0b, which tells Java to please treat it as a binary number and not a decimal number. We then print the value of variable binary number in decimal form, which comes out to 2020. This should give you a good idea of how to use different number systems in Java. One interesting thing about integer literals is that you can embed one or more underscores in an integer literal. It will still be a valid literal. The underscores will be discarded at compile time. Underscores can come only in between the digits of the literal. They cannot come at the start or end of the literal. This is useful to improve the readability of the literal. When we are writing currency amount, we use commas to separate the hundreds place, thousands place, etc. If you have to write an amount of 90,45,360, you will write it like this. In Java, you cannot use commas in your integer literal. Instead, you can use underscores and write it like this. It will be a valid integer literal. Let's look at a BlueJ program to see this in action. Let me open the underscore demo class. We are assigning our integer literal with underscores to the int variable amount. Let's quickly execute it to see the output. I'll first compile the class. Then I'll go to the main window and create an object of underscore demo class. I'll use this object to execute demo underscore method, and here we got our output. As you can see, 90,45,360 is printed and all the underscores are discarded. Let me go back to the code. I can add any number of underscores here, not just one, and all will be discarded. So I have added many underscores now. The class compiles fine. Now let me go ahead and execute this program again. As you can see, the output is exactly same as before. So this is how you can use underscores to improve readability of your integer literals. Floating point literals represent fractional numbers like 3.14159, 14.08, 42.0, 675.238 and so on. Floating point literals can be written in either standard or scientific notation. The numbers 1.5e4 and 6.667e-11 are written in scientific notation. Standard notation is the usual way we write fractional numbers. We first write the whole number part, followed by the decimal sign, followed by the fractional component. In scientific notation, the floating point literal consists of two parts: the mantissa and the exponent. The mantissa must be an integer or a floating point literal in standard notation. It is followed by the letter E and then the exponent is written. The case of letter E doesn't matter. It can be written in either uppercase or lowercase. Exponent must be an integer. Both the mantissa and the exponent can be positive or negative. Taking an example, the floating point literal 0.00053 can be written in scientific notation as 5.3 e minus 4. Here 5.3 is the mantissa. This is followed by the letter E and then the exponent minus 4. The exponent indicates the power of 10 by which the mantissa is to be multiplied, and E represents the number 10. So 5.3 E minus 4 is equivalent to 5.3 into 10 to the power of minus 4. Putting it all together, the standard notation floating point literal 0.00053 can be written in scientific notation as 5.3 into 10 to the power of minus 4, which is equivalent to 5.3 e minus 4. Here are a few more examples to help you understand this better. Now let's look at a program in BlueJ to see some examples of floating point literals. We have a class floating point literal demo. It defines a method demoFPLiteral. Inside this method, there are a few examples of floating point literals. Let's look at the first one here. When you write a floating point literal in Java, by default Java treats it as a double data type value. To specify a float literal, you must append a f to the constant like this. The case of f doesn't matter. It can be either small or capital. Now, if we don't specify f here, then the compiler will give an error. I am removing f to show you the error. The error says possible lossy conversion from double to float. What's happening here is this. When I don't specify f, Java treats 3.14159 as a double value. The variable pi is of type float. The range of float is less than that of double. So when I am assigning 3.14159 to pi, I am actually asking the compiler to convert a value of type double into a value of type float. The compiler knows that this might lead to data loss if the double value is outside the range of float. Hence, it doesn't allow any such implicit conversions and flags this as an error. When we specify f at the end of 3.14159, we explicitly tell the compiler to treat it as a float type, not double type. Now, we are assigning a float type to a float type. No type conversion is happening, so the compiler is happy. So let's make the compiler happy again by specifying f at the end of this float literal. Let's execute the program and get the output. Then we will correlate the output with the code. We will start by compiling the class. The class compiles without any errors. Now we will create an object of floating point literal demo class. We will use this object and execute the demoFPLiteral method. We got our output. Now let's go back to the code. We see 3.14159 gets printed as the first line of the output. This is how we represent a floating point literal in scientific notation and assign it to a float variable. Again, the value is appended with an f to make it of type float. Moving on, this is another example of writing floating point literal in scientific notation. This time we are assigning it to a variable of type double. We can be explicit by appending d to this floating point literal to tell the compiler that this is a double value. This will compile without any issues. But of course this is redundant, as by default floating point literals are of type double. So I will remove this d. Both scientific example 1 and scientific example 2 gets printed properly in the output. The next line specifies floating point literal using underscores to separate the digits of the literal. Just like in integer literals, we can use underscore to separate the digits in floating point literals too. As we can see in the output, the underscores are discarded by the compiler. We will take a look at Boolean literals next. Boolean literals are straightforward. A Boolean literal can take only one of the two Boolean values represented by the words true or false. Boolean literals can only be assigned to variables declared as Boolean or used in expressions with Boolean operators. For those of you coming from a C++ background, please note that in Java, the Boolean literals true and false do not convert to any numerical representation. This is different from C++. In Java, false is not equal to 0 and true literal does not have any numeric value other than 0. They are purely Boolean literals, true and false. Character literals are written by enclosing the character you want to represent within a pair of single quotes. Here you can see some examples of character literals. Most of the characters you can directly enter inside the single quotes. But there are a few cases where entering a character directly is not possible. For example, what if you want to specify the single quote character itself as a character literal? Newline is also a very common example which you can't enter directly inside the single quotes. For such scenarios, we use escape sequences. An escape sequence is a sequence of characters that gets translated to another character when used inside single quotes. We can specify a character which is difficult or impossible to represent directly using its escape sequence. The escape sequence starts with a backslash followed by one or more characters that determine the interpretation of the escape sequence. The backslash along with the characters are enclosed within a pair of single quotes like regular character literals. The escape sequence for Newline is written like this. It starts with a backslash followed by letter n in lowercase and is enclosed in single quotes. The escape sequence for single quote character is this: backslash followed by the single quote character enclosed within a pair of single quotes. Can you guess what will be the escape sequence of backslash itself? It is this: two backslashes enclosed within single quotes. When we were discussing char data type, we learned that characters in Java are represented by the Unicode values. Using the concept of escape sequence, it is possible to write character literals as octal or hexadecimal representation of their Unicode values. To write the character literal in octal form, use the backslash followed by the 3-digit number. Taking small a as an example, its Unicode value in octal is 141. It can be written as a character literal in octal form like this. For hexadecimal form, use the backslash and u and then exactly 4 hexadecimal digits of the Unicode value. A small a in hexadecimal form will be written like this. This table lists the character escape sequences in Java. You can use it as a handy reference. Okay, now that we have some understanding of character literals, let's play around with them in a BlueJ program. We are in BlueJ now. Let's look at our class character literal demo. It has this method demo character literals, which contains some examples of character literals. Let's execute this method. First, as always, we'll compile the class. Then we'll create an object of the class. Then, using this object, we will execute the demo character literals method. We got our output. Let's go back to the code of our class. Here, we define the character literals in the regular way by enclosing them within single quotes and then printing their values. In the output, all the char variables have their expected values. Next, we use escape sequences to represent single quote, new line and backslash as explained earlier in the video. Then we first print the value of single quote. It gets printed properly, confirming that our escape sequence is correct and is working fine. Notice that we used print and not println in this set of print statements. Still, the output appears as if it was printed using println statements. The reason is this new line char variable. We are printing this after single quote and backslash. New line character doesn't have a graphical representation of itself. It makes the next output start on a new line. Println statements add the new line character after every output. Here we are simulating println by printing the new line characters ourselves with the help of its escape sequence. Next, we use the octal and hexadecimal forms of character literal A to print it on the screen. Both println statements output the lowercase letter a as per the expectation. That completes our discussion of character literals. Now we will learn about string literals. String literals are written by enclosing a sequence of characters in a pair of double quotes like this. We have already been using string literals a lot in our BlueJ programs as the input arguments of println and print methods. The escape sequences and octal and hexadecimal forms that we learnt in character literals works the same way in string literals too. Let's quickly go through a few examples of string literals by trying them out in a BlueJ program. Let's look at our class string literal demo. It has this method demo string literal which prints a few string literals on the console. Let's execute this method. Let me compile the class. Next, I will create an object of this class. Then, using this object, I will execute demo string literal method. We have our output. Now, let's go back to the class and look at the code that generated this output. This here defines a regular string. We have been using this for a while now, nothing new here. In this string literal, we have used the escape sequence for new line in between the words line 1, line 2 and line 3. So, this string literal gets printed on 3 lines like this. In the next string literal, we have used the Unicode value of rupee symbol in hexadecimal form, which is this. This line prints a rupee amount of 84,599 on the screen. One thing about Java string literals that is different from other programming languages is that strings in Java should begin and end on the same line. There is no line continuation escape sequence which we can use to continue our strings on multiple lines. Let me try to write this string here on multiple lines. As you can see, the compiler is giving me errors and is not allowing me to continue the string on multiple lines. I'll revert this back to its original form. That brings us to the end of data types and literals. I hope you are having a good learning experience so far. I will see you in the next lesson. Bye for now. Hello friends and welcome back to the course. Now we will start our discussion about variables in Java. The best example that I can think about to explain the concept of variables to you is that of Prime Minister of India. Different people hold the post of Prime Minister of India at different points in time. The current Prime Minister at the time I am recording this video is Narendra Modi. Before him, it was Dr. Manmohan Singh. Before Dr. Manmohan Singh, it was Atal Bihari Vajpayee. And maybe 10, 20, 30 years down the line, we will have new people take up the post of Prime Minister of India. So, you can think of Prime Minister of India as a variable whose value can change from time to time. In a programming language like Java, a variable represents a memory location through a symbolic name which holds a known or unknown value of a particular data type. This name of the variable is used in the program to refer to the stored value. In Java, you must first declare a variable before using it. Those of you who have been following the course all along should be well versed in declaring a variable by now. The simplest way to declare a variable is this: type followed by variable name and then a semicolon. Here, type can be any of Java's primitive data types or the name of a class or interface. We learned about primitive data types earlier in this section. Class and interface types will be covered later in this course. Variable name is an identifier, hence all the identifier naming rules apply to variable name. I will switch to BlueJ to try out a few examples of variable declaration. I will open the variable demo class. Inside this, I have already created an empty method demo variable. Let me declare a couple of variables here. The first example declares a variable of data type int and names it math score. The second example declares a variable of data type boolean and names it promoted. These two variables, math score and promoted, which we have declared just now, are still uninitialized. Don't get overwhelmed by this concept of uninitialized variables. It is very simple. It just means that we have not assigned any value to these variables yet. As we have not assigned any value to these variables, so naturally their values are unknown. Now, an important thing to remember here is that inside a method, Java doesn't allow you to use a variable without initializing it. Let me show you what I mean. Math score is a variable declared inside this method demo variable. I will try to print the value of math score. The compiler is not allowing me to do so. I am getting an error. The error says variable math score might not have been initialized. I need to first initialize a variable before I can use it. Initializing a variable is very simple and straightforward. Just assign a value of the same data type as the variable like this. The error is gone, compiler is all happy now. I am repeating it once again. The value of a variable declared inside a method is unknown. You must initialize your variable before using it. Trying to use an uninitialized variable will result in an error. You can combine declaration and initialization of a variable in a single line like this. I will comment out the earlier lines. You can declare and or initialize multiple variables of the same type in a single line like this. Here, I have declared multiple variables of int data type on a single line. I have initialized some of them while others I have left uninitialized. Similarly, you can do it for variables of other types as well. I will show you examples for byte and double. Let me compile this now. As you can see, the code compiles fine. I hope this should give you some idea about variable declaration and initialization. So far, we have been using literals for initializing the variables. But that's not the only way to initialize the variables. We can also use dynamic expressions for initialization. Let me show you what I mean by dynamic initialization through a BlueJ program. Compute distance method of dynamic initialization demo class computes the distance between 2 points specified by their coordinates x1, y1 and x2, y2. Here, we are initializing the coordinates of the points in the regular way using integer literals 10, 20, 30, 40. After that, we are dynamically initializing x distance and y distance by storing the difference between x2 and x1 in x distance and y2 and y1 in y distance. Then, we are dynamically initializing computed distance by storing the value returned by math.sqrt method into it. Math.sqrt is one of Java's built-in methods. It returns the square root of its arguments. Let me now execute the program and show you the output. As expected, the program computes and prints the distance between the points specified by the coordinates 10, 20 and 30, 40. As you have seen in this program, we can use literals, other variables, and call to other methods in the initialization expression. Scope refers to the visibility of the variables. In other words, scope means in which parts of the program you can see and use your variable. In Java, broadly there are two types of scope: class scope and method scope. We will defer discussing class scope to after we have discussed classes. Right now, we will look into method scope. The variables that are declared within a method are called as local variables. Generally, local variables are accessible within the set of braces they are declared in. Earlier in the course, in the code blocks and tokens lecture, we discussed that opening and closing curly braces define a block of code. The scope of a local variable is the code block within which it is declared. The variable is not accessible outside the block. Let's see this in a BlueJ program. I am starting a new project. Let's call it kboard scope demo. Let me add a new class. I'll name it scope demo. Let me remove this auto-generated code here. Next, I will declare a new method, demo method scope. These opening and closing curly braces define the scope of the method. I'm declaring an int variable, local variable 1, and I will initialize it with a value of 10. I will add an if statement to create another scope. This pair of curly braces define another scope. I will declare a float variable f1 inside this if block. I will initialize it with some value, say 25.5. Let me print f1 now. This variable f1 is only accessible within this set of curly braces. Outside this block, f1 doesn't exist. Let me prove this to you by trying to print f1 after this code block. As you can see, compiler is giving an error as it is not able to find any variable f1. f1 doesn't exist outside this code block where it is defined. Let's comment out this line and execute the demoscope method. The class compiles fine now. I'll create an object of the class and then I'll execute the demo method scope. Okay, we got our output. Everything works fine, and we now have some understanding of scope. Code blocks can be nested, meaning I can declare a block inside another block. This leads to nested scope. In case of nested scope, variables declared in the outer scope are accessible to code in the inner scope, but the variables that are declared in the inner scope are not accessible outside that block. It is time to look at a BlueJ program to better understand the concept of nested scope. Okay, so here we have our class nested scope demo. It has this method nested demo. This opening and closing curly braces define the method scope of nested demo. This local variable outer scope var can be seen and used throughout the nested demo method. Next, this if block defines another scope inside the outer scope of nested demo method. We declare another variable inner scope var inside the if block. Both the variables inner scope var and outer scope var are accessible inside this inner scope. Outer scope var, which is declared outside this scope, is visible here because variables defined in the outer scope are accessible within inner scope. If I uncomment this line, it will give an error. This error is coming because inner scope var is not known here. Variables declared in the inner scope are only accessible within that block. They are not accessible in the outer scope. Hence, we are getting this error. Let me comment this line again. Of course, outer scope var is still accessible as it is declared inside the nested demo method scope. One important thing to remember here is that inside the inner scope, you cannot declare a variable having the same name as the one in the outer scope. Here I am in the inner scope of if block. Let me try to declare a variable with the same name as outer scope var. As you can see, the compiler is giving me an error. The error says variable outer scope var is already defined in method nested demo. I'll remove this line now. Variables can be declared at any point within a block, but they are only valid after they have been declared. I can declare a new variable at this point and use it. This is valid and will run just fine. Let me execute the program and show you. Okay, so our class compiles fine. I'm creating an object of the class and then executing the nested demo method. Here is foo printed in the output. But if I try to use a variable before declaring it, the compiler will start yelling at me. Let me show you this as well. I am assigning C to variable bar before declaring it. After this, I am declaring bar as a char variable. As you can see, the compiler is not happy and is shouting at me to get my act right. Let me comment out this code. Next, let's look at lifetime of variables. Lifetime of a variable is confined to its scope. Variables are created when their scope is entered and destroyed when their scope is left. If a variable declaration includes an initializer, then that variable will be reinitialized each time the block in which it is declared is entered. Let's look at an example BlueJ program to understand lifetime of variables. Let's open this class lifetime of variable and look into demo lifetime method. We declare and initialize a variable foo inside this scope of if block. The variable foo gets created when this line is executed, and here, when the program control leaves the scope of if block, foo is destroyed. After this point, foo doesn't contain the value of 64.76. Let's execute the program now and then move to the for block. Let me compile the program. Next, I'll create an object of lifetime of variable class. Then I'll use this object to execute demo lifetime method. Here we have our output. Let me bring back the code of the class. Coming to the for block. Here we declare and initialize a variable bar. Then we change its value to 20. At the start of every iteration of the for loop, program control enters this code block. The variable bar is created and initialized with the value 10. Next, the value of bar is changed to 20. At the end of the iteration, the code block is exited. The variable bar is destroyed and it no longer holds the value 20. That's why you see the values 10 and 20 printed in each iteration of the for loop. This completes our discussion of scope and lifetime of variables. I hope these lessons were helpful to you in understanding variables in Java. Next, we will look at constants. We looked at variables in depth and understood how we can work with them in our programs. Many times in our programs, we come across situations where we need to assign a name to a constant value. Unlike variables, we need a guarantee that these values should not change during the execution of the program. Some examples of such values can be the constant pi. We want pi to have a value of 3.14159. Other examples can be that of speed of light or number of days in a week. Java provides a way to declare such constant values. The syntax to declare a constant value is this. The declaration starts with the keyword final. Then you specify the data type. After that, you specify the name that you want to give to your constant value. In the end, you assign the value you want your constant to have and end the declaration with a semicolon. It is like variable declaration, just that the declaration needs to start with the keyword final and the value needs to be assigned. Like variables, constant name is an identifier, so all identifier naming rules apply to constant name. Here are a few examples. In the first example, we declare pi as a constant of type double and assign a value of 3.14159 to it. Similarly, in the next two examples, we declare speed of light and days in a week as constants of type long and int respectively and assign them appropriate values. Generally, Java developers name the constants in capital letters. This makes it easier to identify them in the code. Remember that this is just a convention or a best practice. The compiler doesn't mandate this. The name of your constant just needs to follow all the identifier naming rules and the compiler will be happy. Time to switch to BlueJ to see constants in action. We have constants demo class here. Let's open it. This compute circle area method of this class computes the area of a circle. Here, we have declared pi as a constant of double data type using the keyword final. We have assigned a value of 3.14159 to our constant pi. Later, we use pi to calculate the area of the circle. I will execute the program to show you that it is in perfect working condition. Let me bring back the code. Now let me try to change the value of pi. This is flagged as an error. The compiler is not allowing me to change the value of pi as I have declared pi as a constant using the final keyword. Let me comment out this line. That's all I had to say about constants for now. We will look at final keyword again when we discuss classes.